Hey guys, Squatch Reloading here, and today we're going to do a revisit on the GRX sizing die from Redding. The last video I did, I got some questions, a little more specific on the sizing before and after. How do I inspect for that? So today we're going to set these back up. If you want to get into details of how to set these dies up, please revisit my other video and it'll explain all that. But so that's what we're going to do today, real quick, and let's get after it. Okay, so here's a quick way that I try to sort out the bulged cases. Now, if you've done any research or if you're watching this, you're definitely experiencing this, but a quick way that I found to sort through it is we know that the back or the end of the case is what's not supported in the Glock chamber, specifically at the 6 o'clock position. That's going to be right above your feed ramp there. So what we do know is it's mainly the base is the problem, and a quick way I found to sort through those without examining them all with my eyes is I'll take my chamber gauge. In this case, this one's from Dillon in 10mm, and I will slide the base. If it goes through, and I'll get up here where you guys can see, the base of that is sliding right in my case gauge. So I know that those probably will not need to run through my GRX die. So those will go straight into my sizer, and then, okay. So, and then here's where we get with one that's bulged. So we can see that the base will not slide into my case gauge. So what we'll do is we'll set all those aside, and then we'll get some measurements and then run them through the sizing die and see where we end up on those. Okay guys, I just finished up one tray off my Frankfurt Arsenal dryer there with my 10mm brass. I know all of this brass is once fired. It's all range brass. I just don't know what gun it comes from. But what I can tell you is the brass that did not fit my case gauge in the one tray, and there's probably 100, 125 pieces there. I have about 15 here that wouldn't go, and when I was doing some measuring, they were all averaging about 434 thousandths, or 0.434. Our specification, according to our Sierra load manual, is a base diameter of 0.425. And as I'm measuring the cartridges that the base passed through my case gauge, they're all right there at 425, 426 at the highest. So we do know that there is something definitely different with these cartridges versus the ones that went right through the base of my case gauge. So what I want to do is, my theory is that if I put this in my regular Redding sizing die, that we will see the crease that first brought me into this world of the Glock Bulge and everything else. So I'm going to just size one, and we're going to see if that crease becomes apparent. Okay, so I'm going to take one cartridge that I've already pre-measured, and it was 0.434. So we're going to put it in our shell holder here and just try it in our Redding sizing die and see if that crease appears. Wow, look at that. So that's the problem. That is what the Glock Bulge will do to your brass. Now, personally, I mean, you can see it more prevalent on the one side, so we can assume that that would be at the 6 o'clock position in the unsupported chamber of the Glock 10mm. But guys, I would not reload this just because I do shoot Glocks in 10mm, and I do not have aftermarket barrels and everything, and that poses too much of a risk that I'm willing to take, especially on the full house loads that I like to do. So that's why the Redding GRX die is so important. So I'm going to take these 15 that I've already identified, just like this one. We're going to run them through the GRX die and then run them through our sizing die and see if this condition still exists. Okay guys, so what we just did was we took a cartridge that we know had prevalent Glock Bulge based off our measurements, based off our checks through our case gauge. You know, when I put my first video out on this, you know, I got a lot of, I don't want to say hate mail, but I got a lot of people saying you're crazy. The Glock Bulge does not exist. And I'm here to tell you that it does exist, and it is prevalent in Glock pistols that are shooting 40, 10 millimeter, or 357 SIG, especially those ones that are running a hot round. You know, it does exist in a factory barrel. But we can work around that, and that is the purpose of the GRX die or the Lee Bulge Buster die. I mean, companies wouldn't come out with that if it didn't exist. So I've got the 15 or so here that I found in my first tray during my inspections. I'm going to run those through the GRX die. We'll get some after measurements. We know that they average 0.434 on the outside diameter at the base where the bulge was. So let's run those through, and then we'll do a check afterwards. We'll measure them and see if the bases will now go into the case gauge. Okay, I do have all these cartridges lubed up with Imperial sizing die wax, and just these cartridges alone, I can feel some resistance. More so, I mean, I'm really pushing on those. So let me grab one that I know doesn't have the bulge, and you will see a difference on how that goes. This one right here, it just goes right through. So there is a difference, and this die set is taking care of it. So now we're going to just finish pushing these through, and I thought you guys would like to see how those are coming up through the die. And I can tell you that this setup, especially here on my rock chucker, it goes very quick. Okay, let's get to measuring these. Okay guys, so we finished running those samples through our GRX die. So the first check I'm going to do is just make sure that the bases are sliding into my case gauge, and sure enough, they are. So I've already checked all of these in my case gauge and no issues. So if I was sorting these out as they were coming out of my dryer or my tumbler, I would just set those aside and wouldn't run them through the GRX die. Now there's nothing that says you can't run everything through it, and you know, for you guys, if you don't have a case gauge, I would say do it. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to measure these and see how much reduction that the die actually did, and then we'll run them back through our sizing die, because we do know that they were bulged, and we'll see if that crease is going to be present after we've run them through the die. Okay guys, so I measured up these cases as they come out of the GRX die. We've already done the check through the case gauge, and we're getting an average diameter of 424, 0.424. We know our specification is 0.425. So we're right there where we want to be. We know that when we size that we typically undersize slightly to accommodate for spring back and so on. But we're going to run these through, and if we're correct, we should not see the crease that we saw before. Again, this is all the same brass. Looks good. Yep, and I'm just kind of wiping off some of the sizing wax residue just to make sure. Yep, and these look great. So we will just continue running these through, and then it's on to the rest of the reloading process, and we know that we've corrected the potential issue with the crease by running these through the GRX die. And again guys, this is something that occurs in 40 caliber, is very common. Those of you guys that like the 357 SIG, you will also find this, especially in some of the hotter duty rounds or hunting rounds, things like that. There we go. So I hope this answered some of your guys' questions regarding the Glock Bulge. And I know that there's people out there that think it's a myth. You know, maybe it's because we're Squatch reloading, and I'm a Squatch. Maybe that's why it's all mythical, and maybe that's why I ran into it. But my wife's over there. She's over there laughing too. But in all seriousness, you know, if you run into it, you've got a couple options. One, throw them away. Don't even deal with it. Or, you know, find a solution that will work you through it. And, you know, when we looked at the case that we sized, that we knew that the base was expanded from the Glock Bulge, I would not load that. And I surely wouldn't want to have missed that and loaded it and then fired it through my 10mm, especially with some of the full house stuff that I like to play with. I wouldn't even want to know what would happen if that lined up just perfectly at the top of the feed ramp there. And, you know, in lieu of buying an aftermarket barrel, but, you know, the 10mm that I typically shoot, you know, is for hunting, and I do a lot of practice with it, you know, because I want to make sure that I can have good shot placement, good accuracy, you know, ethical kill. So, but that's it for today. And if any of you guys have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I will put a link again to the GRX sizing die from Redding. You know, Lee makes the Bulge Buster as well. But, you know, until next time, guys, don't forget to check us out here. Like and subscribe on YouTube, but we're also on Utah Gun Exchange, Gun Streamer, and over at the Reloaders Network, we have a Facebook page called Squatch Reloading, and then we're also now on Instagram at Squatch Reloading. So until next time, guys, God bless.